I want you to make some observations. One of the things that you have to learn about Malcolm, that when you talk about Malcolm, you always have to ask yourself the question, which Malcolm? Whenever you talk about Malcolm, you have to ask yourself the question, which Malcolm? When you study the Nation of Islam, you're going to find out that on the surface, when you look at it, you might be tempted to say that the Nation of Islam is the antithesis of Islam. It is the very opposite. For instance, do you know that what is the wearing of the beard for a man in Islam? What is it? Wajib. 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 At least sunnah. At least, the very least sunnah, we should do it. Right? Some even say wajib, mandatory. But in the Nation of Islam, just the opposite. Now, you're going to notice that when you start looking at Malcolm, ask yourself from two things. Can you distinguish post-Nation of Islam, after the Nation of Islam, and during the Nation of Islam? Two things you might be able to tell. If you look at Malcolm, see if you can tell by looking at him, which Malcolm is this? Is this Malcolm in 1964 when he made his Declaration of Independence in February 1964? Or is it a 63 tape, 1962 speech? And you might be able to tell two ways. Number one is what he looks like. See if you can tell a difference in Malcolm's look when you study these things, these clips. Number two, see if you can tell a difference in the rhetoric of Malcolm. Do you think that if Malcolm made the Declaration of Independence and left the Nation of Islam in 1964, do you think in the last speeches of 64 and 65, do you think there's a difference in the contents of his speech? Would you think? Or would you think it's the same rhetoric? What would you think? Different. Let's see. Also, if you're really keen, you will find out, and we'll talk about that there were some rumblings in the nation with Malcolm and his leader before he left, that in 1963, some would say, when Malcolm made a statement about JFK, when he died, there was chickens coming home to roost, and then Elijah Muhammad silenced him for 90 days. Some would say that it was a pretext. Malcolm's statement was a pretext for Elijah Muhammad to do what he'd been wanting to do to get him out of the Nation of Islam. Someone make that statement, right? If that's the case, see if you can notice a change, because I'm telling you that there was a change in Malcolm's teaching even before he left. And we're going to talk about that based on what he himself said. Now, when you start making these observations, see if you can tell. What is the obvious sign that Malcolm made the transition? When you look at him, what's the most obvious sign? He has a beard. Once you see he had a beard, know that in the Nation of Islam, you can't wear a beard. You are not allowed to. You're not allowed to wear a beard in the Nation of Islam. It's the opposite. It is haram. It's haram. I want to talk about that.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that there is one God. He has one religion, and that he gave this one religion, the same religion, to all of his prophets. Which means Abraham was a Muslim, Lot was a Muslim, Noah was a Muslim, Moses was a Muslim, Daniel was a Muslim, Jesus was a Muslim. All were Muslims, all practiced the religion of Islam, and all were black men. None of them were white. You cannot name one prophet, please, you cannot name one prophet in the Bible that came from Europe. No prophet came from Europe. The prophets all came from Africa and Asia.
The messenger of the Lord of the world, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, as I greet you.
That's Louis Farrakhan, if you notice.
People, the way out to your salvation. This problem is to be solved by God, and the solution of the problem has been given to me.
Never has a prophet been a white man.
When I said that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has a solution to this 400-year-old problem, and that this is a divine solution that has been given to him by God, when America says, "In God we trust," she means she trusts in that white God who showed her how to steal dark-skinned Indians, who showed her how to kidnap you and me and bring us over here and make us slaves.
We invested 310 years of slave labor, 310 years, every day of which your and my mother and father worked for nothing. Not 8 hours a day. There was no union in that day. They worked from sun up until sundown, from can't see in the morning until can't see at night. They never had a day off. And on Sunday, they were allowed to sit down and sing about when they die, they wouldn't be slaves no more. When they died.
This is our investment. This is our contribution, our blood. Not only did we give of our free labor, we gave of our blood. Every time he had a call to arms, we were the first ones in uniform. We died on every battlefield the white man had. We have made a greater sacrifice than anybody who's standing up in America today. We have made a greater contribution and have collected less. Have collected.
This is who she means when she says, "In God we trust." That blue-eyed God, that blonde-haired God, that pale-skinned God who blessed them to kidnap you and me and bring us here and make us slaves. Our people, the God of our forefathers, the black man's God. In fact, I'm speaking about the black God, the supreme being, Almighty Allah himself. And anytime anyone teaches you to believe in a God that doesn't look like you, you give them that God back.
We don't want to be around that old pale thing. We don't want to integrate with that old pale thing. We don't want to sleep next to that old pale thing. No, we can do without it. You find that old pale thing laying out in the sun, trying to get to look like you. That old pale thing. You find him using man tan, trying to look like you. That old pale thing. That old sickly looking thing. And today we see him like he is. There was a time when we used to drool in the mouth over white people. We thought they were pretty because we were blind. We were dumb. We couldn't see them as they are. But since the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has come and taught us the religion of Islam, which has cleaned us up and made us so we can see for ourselves, now we can see that old pale thing to look exactly as he looked. Nothing but an old pale thing.
There's great interest in the fact that you have joined the Muslim religion. How long have you had this interest, Cassius?
Oh, for the past 6 years, I would say, after hearing a lot of teachings on Negro history and who we were before we got here. And 1 and 1 makes 2.
You feel your affiliation with the Muslim religion, being a follower of the Muslim religion, had something to do with your winning the championship?
Well, I would say so. My religion is what the only thing that I can give me credit for pulling me through, because 99 out of 100 seemed to see no possibility of me winning. The newspaper reporters and everybody all over the world condemned me. They said it would be a mismatch, and couldn't nobody believe it. So my prayers to Allah and faith in my religion, living a clean, righteous life, I have to say that's what pulled me through.
Winner by a TKO in the 7th round, Cassius Clay. I don't have a mark on my face, and I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest.
Malcolm X, I want to talk with you briefly about your affiliation with Cassius. How long have you known him?
About 3 years.
And have you been advising him as far as his religious affiliations are concerned?
Well, no, I don't give advice to anyone. He's my brother and my friend. I express what I know and understand around him, but he has a mind of his own and understanding of.
You heard Elijah Muhammad speak, right? right? You heard him speak? Be honest. What did he sound like to you? Be real. Be real with me. What did he sound like to you? You heard him. Convincing? Elijah Muhammad? That's what he sounded. Not because, see, I don't want you to be prejudiced because what you know about him. What you saw here, just what you saw. Doesn't know a lot? What else? What did you get from him? Normal preacher.
Very over-theatrical.
Over-theatrical. Gift for gab? Elijah Muhammad? Do you think listening to him, Elijah Muhammad, not Malcolm, you'd have been convinced to follow him? You said no quickly. Why? Why you said no so quickly?
Because, I mean, the way Malcolm actually speaking, you want to hear him.
You want to hear Malcolm. You know what? One of the problems in the Nation of Islam, Malcolm began to outshine his leader. People come to hear Malcolm, not Elijah Muhammad. If you go back to all the early teachings of Malcolm, always, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us this, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that, and always the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But then you start hearing his name less and less. And Malcolm began to teach. Question. You saw one of the greatest boxers ever, Muhammad Ali. What attracted Muhammad Ali to this man who can hardly speak? Not as eloquent as Malcolm, not as eloquent as Louis Farrakhan, not as eloquent as some of his eloquent ministers. What was it? Malcolm went to the 8th grade. Why did he stop? How many read the autobiography? Raise your hand. Okay. If I could make you read something, I would make you read the autobiography. Did you read it? Do yourself a favor. Get it. Get it and read it. Brothers and sisters, you will be enriched by it. I swear by Allah, you'll be enriched by it. Get the autobiography of Malcolm X and read it. You would be enriched by it. Why did Malcolm leave school at an early age? Let's see his history first. According to autobiography of Malcolm X was a brilliant student. He went to basically an all-white school. He was the president of his class. He did very, very good. He was smart, great potential. His 8th grade teacher told him, Malcolm, you better start thinking about what you want to become, what you're going to do in life. What did Malcolm want to become? A lawyer. And what did his teacher tell him? Oh, Malcolm. Malcolm, you have to be realistic, Malcolm. Come on, Malcolm. Instead of being a lawyer, you got to be practical. What white people going to come and yeah. Malcolm, why don't you be a carpenter? Be a carpenter. You don't know what that does to a young child when the teacher discourages you and you want to be somebody, and that was the norm at that time. Black people couldn't rise. And that changed the life of Malcolm. That incident, that one incident, he says so himself. And then Malcolm goes on, and his mother, she goes insane. She gets institutionalized. Malcolm and his brothers and sisters go to foster homes. Malcolm becomes a bad guy. He gets tired of white people. He don't like white people no more. He said he'd go to school, they called him nigger. He said they called him nigger so much he thought that his name was nigger. No, I'm serious, that's what he said. He thought that was the name. And they called niggas, they talking about us. And then what happens, Malcolm is caught with a white girl burglarizing. And the white girl basically let her go, but throw the book at him and sentence him to 10 years in prison. Burglary.
She robbed?
No. They robbed together a house. They robbed the house. It's okay. Yes.
I'm not sure, did Malcolm X have a partner?
He had a partner, yeah.
Did he,
I think in the movie, Spike Lee played his partner, I think, in the movie. Yeah, he did. They called him Shorty. His name was Shorty.
Did he convert the
Never did. Malcolm tried, but he never did. Yeah. Now, Malcolm is in prison. His brother writes him about this Nation of Islam. Malcolm is studying in prison and talking about Islam as taught by Elijah Muhammad. No Islam, no Sunni Islam, no Imams, no Qari, no nothing. But this man, Elijah Muhammad, talking about Islam, you're God's, white man is the devil. And Malcolm said, yeah, that made sense to him. Malcolm comes out of prison, 1952, and begins to preach this message of Islam. And he becomes the #1 minister for Elijah Muhammad. He opens up temples all over the place, and he starts a newspaper called Muhammad Speaks. Ever heard of it?
Did you hear about Islam from Elijah himself in prison?
No, not at first. He heard from his brother, another inmate, and then Elijah Muhammad wrote him letters in prison.
That was the
Nation of Islam newspaper was established by Malcolm when he came out of prison. Don't quote me, but I think 1959. Malcolm started Muhammad Speaks newspaper. I think. Don't quote me on that. I have to check to make sure. Now, question. Jeffrey 12X, who's he? Okay. Jeffrey 12X is go back. Jeffrey Cares, student at New York University, on the basketball team, shooting guard. Has a very good shot, good jump shot. Plays real good defense. I'm just giving you some background information. And the captain of the basketball team is a guy named Jerry Tenex. The captain on the basketball team, New York University, a guy named Jerry Tenex. On the way to the basketball game, he sits next to Jeffrey Cares and start talking about Islam. Fake Islam. And somewhere along the line, every day, Muslims come on campus, they talk to Jeffrey, and one night, Wednesday, Jeffrey puts on this beautiful brown pinstripe suit, brown shoes, and Jeffrey had an afro so big, you can land a helicopter on it. And he goes to the temple, and a minister named Arthur 14X is preaching a subject. Jeffrey gets excited, and he joins the movement. They said, how many of you believe what you heard today is the truth? I raised my hand. How many want to join the nation? I raised my hand. I signed the paper. Wednesday. Friday night, I go back there again. And same minister, Arthur 14X, preaches a message. I get fired up, and they talk about this newspaper called Muhammad Speaks. A freshman at New York University, never in his life ever sold even a pen, afraid to death to speak. Jeffrey, so shy that in junior high school, when the teacher used to make the students stand up in front of the class to read from a book, Jeffrey used to sit in the back and hide, scared. Don't want to speak in front of people, timid. In the Nation of Islam, the second day, that Friday, Minister Arting 14X teaches a message, and in the end of the day, he talks about this newspaper, Muhammad Speaks. And we want you to sell the newspaper. And I said, okay, I volunteer. I will take some. And I take these newspapers that same night, and I go on Eastern Parkway and Utica Avenue. Busy place. And I'm saying to myself, what in the world am I doing here? And I got these papers in my hand, and I remember the first man that came next to me. I go to him and said, sir, you don't want this newspaper, do you? He said, no. I said, okay. Scared to death, but believing in what I heard, fired and motivated. Then Jeffrey Karras becomes Jeffrey 12X. Now he's a member in the Nation of Islam. Now he's going to school. He's working full time. He gets married. Going to school full time, working full time. And Elijah Muhammad says, we need people to sell newspapers. What does Jeffrey 12X do? He quits his job and sells newspapers for a living. 1,000 newspapers a week. Under my arm, going door to door, going to the projects, Albany projects and Marcy projects, and walking the street, no car, a big blue bag of 80 Muhammad Speaks newspapers and 50 newspapers in my arm. Every day, in the rain, in the snow, in the hail, I'm going and I'm knocking on doors trying to get people to buy a 25-cent newspaper. Why? Because I'm dedicated to the cause. I did it. Question. What made me do it? What made Malcolm do it? What made Muhammad Ali do it? What was it about this man who could hardly speak? Tell you something about Malcolm people don't know. This man, it is said, and I think it was Times Magazine or some publication said that Malcolm X was the second most sought after speaker in America after Goldwater. Malcolm was speaking all over Harvard University. I have his lectures at Harvard University. And it wasn't an audience of African Americans in the ghetto. Malcolm would astound scholars and universities and Cambridge and all over the place. Malcolm was articulate. Malcolm was charismatic. Malcolm was persuasive. And everywhere Malcolm preached, brilliant orator. And you know what? In all the honorariums that he got, how many did he keep for himself in his own pocket? Not even one. All the money he gave to the Nation of Islam. Malcolm gave everything to the Nation of Islam to this degree that, did you know that when he died, all he had was $600, according to his daughter Ilyasa in her book, Growing Up X. All he had was $600 to his name. And did you know that when Malcolm died, he was homeless? Malcolm was homeless. How did Malcolm, why did Malcolm, what motivated Malcolm and Muhammad Ali and Imam Siraj Wahhaj and Warathuddin Muhammad and all these people that came from Elijah Muhammad? What was it that made them sacrifice everything for that man, Elijah Muhammad? What was it? Malcolm was brilliant. He could start an organization by himself. But he didn't leave the Nation of Islam. He was put out. Malcolm's going all over. The nation is rising. When Malcolm joined the nation, maybe there were 400 followers in a few temples. Malcolm went all over. New York City became the minister in the biggest temple in the Nation of Islam, New York City. The most important place, New York City, 116th Street, Lenox Avenue. Malcolm became the minister there. And in 1963, in the city of Philadelphia, something remarkable happened in the Nation of Islam. For the first time, Elijah Muhammad made Malcolm X his national leader, his national imam, minister, and spokesman. And then he said in front of everyone, this man Malcolm will be with me. He will never leave me. He will never leave me. Meanwhile, something is happening in the Nation of Islam. Malcolm is rising in prominence in the nation. Everybody talking about Malcolm. When the newspapers and the reporters from magazines, they want to, Malcolm, what do you say about Malcolm? What do you say? The television reporters, they want to speak to Malcolm. They don't want to speak to Elijah Muhammad. So what happens? Elijah Muhammad is invited to the Middle East. He's invited to Africa, and he says, Malcolm, you go. And when he goes to Saudi Arabia, he's invited to go to Mecca in 1959. But he says, no, I don't want to go to Mecca. Why didn't he want to go to Mecca? Because he wanted to defer to his leader. He thought it was wrong for him to go to Mecca before Elijah Muhammad. So he said, I won't go to Mecca. This is the love and commitment that he had for Elijah Muhammad. He believed, I take him at his word, he believed in Elijah Muhammad 100% as the messenger of God. You got to remember this. This is real. I believe he's the messenger at the time. My wife, we believe he's the messenger of God. Malcolm believes he's the messenger of God. Muhammad Ali believes he's the messenger of God. So now all of these people are following this man, Elijah Muhammad. So Malcolm preaches and the nation grows in prominence. And then 1963, November, something happens. John F. Kennedy, President of the United States of America, is assassinated, Dallas, Texas. Elijah Muhammad tells his ministers, don't say anything negative against JFK. The country loves him. Elijah Muhammad, in December of '63, scheduled to speak in New York City, Manhattan Center. He can't make it. He sends Malcolm. No statements against John F. Kennedy. Malcolm gives a speech. He doesn't mention JF Kennedy. The question and answer period. A reporter from New York Times newspaper. Malcolm, what do you think about the death of John F. Kennedy? Now you got to know something about Malcolm. Malcolm was like this. He'll say something like this. These weren't his exact words, but he'll say something like this. You asked me about the death of John F. Kennedy. Black people murdered every day in the streets of Harlem. Black people murdered in Brooklyn every day. And you asked me about the death of John F. Kennedy. Well, see, I'm an old farm boy myself. And for me, the death of John F. Kennedy is like chickens coming home to roost. Headlines, all the newspapers. Malcolm disparaged John F. Kennedy. Malcolm happy at the death of John F. Kennedy. Elijah Muhammad is angry. He calls Malcolm into Chicago. Chicago was headquarters. And Malcolm, you have hurt the nation. We have to silence you for 90 days to distance you from this blunder. And Malcolm says, yes, dear Holy Apostle, I agree. I submit. Malcolm is silenced for 90 days. Malcolm can't speak. Malcolm thinks after 90 days, he'll be able to speak. He can't even speak in his own temple. Temple number 7 in Manhattan, 116th Street, Lenox Avenue. He can't even speak there. Malcolm is hurt, but he complies. And when the 90 days is up, Malcolm naively thought he's going to be reinstated. Elijah Muhammad doesn't reinstate him, and then people begin to get the word that Malcolm will be reinstated if he submits. He said, okay, I know what this is all about. So, March 1964, Malcolm declares his independence. Something interesting happens. Fatima?
Sorry, you said Malcolm, if Malcolm submits, but didn't he already submit?
He already submitted. So Malcolm understood that there was something more. There's something more than that. In other words, the pretense for the people was as if Malcolm wasn't submitting, but in fact, he was submitting.
And chickens coming home to roost means that it was inevitable?
It was inevitable. And that's what he was saying. All he's saying is that really he's a product of the hate. America is a place of hatred, and is nothing but a product of the hatred that this country has produced.